Us finishing up the call, what we'll do is we'll distribute the presentation back to you guys so you guys can sift through the information and take any further notes. If you have a notepad and a pen handy, I think it'll go a long way to write down as many notes as possible. I'll just put my big noggin up here. I forgot to switch myself on. There I am. So again, when we get to that Q&A part of the session, you should see somewhere on your screen a little icon, whether it be a little triangle, a little square, and a little circle bunched together, where you can enter in your any questions. You can do it in the little chat function as well, or you can even raise up your hand and basically get me to flag that, and you can ask a question openly on your mic and via your video if you want to, if you're more comfortable doing that. So let's get started. So again, tonight's all about fielding questions about the college soccer system and how we can assist. Obviously, the we part of this is myself. I'm the founder of Upper 90 College in John Stavonia. Again, we have Tony Lowe, who's one of our amazing alumni who have gone through the system via our pathway. And, very fortunate to have guided Tony down the pathway, and he had a tremendous collegiate career, which he'll uncover shortly, and give you a little bit of insight as to his experiences in the system or otherwise. So again, we're going to cover who we are. We're going to do a Q&A with Tony and myself and Hans, who's on the call. And then we're just going to talk about next steps as well. Okay. So remember, just as many questions as you may have, feel free to send them our way, and we'll get those covered off for you. So Upper 90, who are we? It's a 15-year journey. It's been a long time. As you can see, I do have a little bit of grey in my beard or otherwise. Been doing it for quite some time now. And I used to definitely have a lot more flowing locks way back in time. I definitely lost a few hair follicles along the way. And it's not because I'm overly stressed by what we do. Sometimes I get maybe overly excited, and maybe that's where it loosens up. But it's been a 15-year journey. We've been extremely excited to have helped navigate an amazing pathway through football and education for our clients, not only here in Australia, but we do have a global client base. We have hundreds of clients from all around the world, phenomenal success stories just like Tony. We're very fortunate to have been able to build a very, very strong network of college soccer coaches. The way that was built was over the years I've traveled to and from the US and really worked very diligently to connect the dots with other coaches. As you'll hear in a moment, I've got a little bit of a background as a coach as well for quite some time. So for me, it's always been this kind of a great opportunity for me to connect with other coaches, especially in the US market, where we focus the business. But we're headquartered in Sydney. We have a global scouting network. I dare say today, probably around about 90% of our clients come from Australia, the other 10% from different parts of the world. Today, we have roughly around about 780 men's and women's college soccer programs right across the three major governing bodies that are kind of in our direct sphere of connection. And, again, the way that was built was by me initially, going back and forth over the years and really building relationships at the coalface with a lot of coaches. So I spent a lot of time traveling to the US, in many different parts of the US, and whether it be going out and visiting coaches directly at schools, going to large-scale networking events. Over the years, I've been very blessed to have been able to have attended a few graduation ceremonies as well. So it's something that's extremely meaningful to me. But it is a very organic relationship that we've built over the years with our coaching network. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that I've met every single one of the coaches in our network. It'd be quite impossible. But the beauty of our network is that, given all the relationships that we build over the years, coaches refer us on to other colleagues right across the system to build that bridge and have us work with them and help build their programs. Lots of money in the collegiate game. The figure, I guess, if you want to look at just the NCAA alone, it's very close to $4 billion worth of scholarship that's divvied out every single year, right across all, and that's USD, across all the major sports that the NCAA look after. And we've been very, very lucky to have sourced a significant amount of scholarship for all our clients over the years. That's a little bit of an outdated number. We're very, very fortunate as well to have over the years built some phenomenal relationships. You see at the top of the screen that we have relationships formally with the Central Coast Mariners. So we work with their academy closely. And for those kids that typically get released out of the academy, we work with them, and we work with the technical directors at the club to be able to open up their eyes to other pathways rather than just going back into the NPL system, being regurgitated through that system, and open their eyes to another world, right? Education and definitely high quality and high levels of football. So we're very, very grateful to have those relationships with clubs, not only Central Coast Mariners, but different clubs right across Australia, different academies or otherwise, different educational groups like CEDA. Very fortunate to partner with those third parties, and they're a great source of reference points to players who might be suitable for this pathway. And some of those partnerships also entail, relationships that we have at the school level. So Ante Juric is a good friend, obviously. Many of the, other sports high schools in the vicinity of Sydney and different parts of Australia and otherwise are always very good at helping us connect the dots with any player or parent that might be interested in the pathway. One of the things that I take a lot of pride in, and I'll give you some clarity, just this year alone, it's been another step. Every year is very successful in terms of where our clients' trajectory, both academically and athletically, but this year was absolutely phenomenal. We actually had 11 of our clients reach their conference tournaments and or win their conference tournaments, which is kind of a big deal. It's like winning your league, like winning the NPL, and then going off into the national tournament rounds. 3 of those clients, 2 female, 1 male, went all the way through into either what they call the Sweet 16, so the very best teams within their divisions, top 16 teams, and or the Final 4. 2 of those kind of dropped out. And then 1 was actually crowned this year a national champion. So we have 4 faces to the right of the screen there. Obviously, I was really gunning on our girl to win the national tournament with her program. She's based with a team out in the NAIA called Kaiser in Florida, and they went into the final of the national tournament in the NAIA just this past week, but bowed out. So I was really, really hopeful, fingers crossed, that she would have been our first female national champion. But one of our boys scored the match-winning penalty in the penalty shootout, 7 rounds of penalties to take home the crown for the NCAA Division III National Championship this year with Amherst College, which is a phenomenally academic school. So I'm really super proud. But so I need to add to this slide. We have 5 national champions now in the last 15 years. A great achievement. But outside of that, from the footballing perspective, just like Tony, will hear his story, but the other part is the academic side, and we've had, even just this year alone, first team academic All-Americans. We've had a few of those people who have been recognised, or players who have been recognised for their work on the pitch and definitely in the classroom, and they're recognised nationally for that. So it's just been tremendous success year upon year, but very, very proud of, all our cohort over the years, but in particular, very, very proud of these kids who have gone all the way and won a national championship. It's very unique to our business, and I don't think that I know of any other third party anywhere around the world that has that kind of consistency of national champions across the time that they've been running their businesses. So very, 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 very happy with that. But it's also a testament to the way that we actually work with our clients. It's very important for me to build a phenomenal relationship with our clients. So we don't bring on 1,001 different kids. When we work with parents and players, it's a long-term relationship. When I say long-term, obviously, we've got alumni like Tony who will jump on a call, kind of a drop of a hat. So we're always grateful for that. But, just this year alone, I think I just got another invite from one of our kids to invite me to their wedding over in Boston. So it's really rewarding to have these kinds of relationships with all our clients and our parents. But that's a little bit about Upper 90 at a very, very high level, 50,000 foot view of it. A little bit about me. That's me with a very, very serious glare. If you I don't know if you've realised, but the surname is of Slavic descent. So anyone who's at Matraville and who works alongside, who gets coached by Tony, Ante Uri's probably seen that gaze from time to time, I'm pretty sure, but it's all in the eyes. Been around the track for a long time. Ex kind of NSL player, Cross City United, Marconi, schoolboy representation, trials at different clubs in different parts of the world. But I wear 2 hats. So I obviously run Upper 90, but over the last 20 years, I've been a coach right up to the A-League level. The last club I worked with in the A-League was with MacArthur FC, and I worked very closely with Mile Stoyovsky prior to him taking on the role of the head coaching role of MacArthur in NPL 1. But I've been right across the men's and the women's game, from SAP players right up to first grade players, working with national team players. Been very fortunate over the years to have been able to do that. So that's a little bit about me, but enough about me. There's a very special person on this call, and I think his journey, he doesn't like, he's shaking his head, he's saying, stop hyping me up, but Tony is one of my very, very dear alumni. Obviously, they're all special to me, but, Tony did so tremendously well. He'll tell his story in a moment, okay? And I'm not going to toot his horn any further, but this is Tony Lowe. I'll get Tony to kind of switch on his microphone, introduce himself, and maybe, Tony, what you want to do is look at this slide deck that I cooked up for you, man. It's a shiny, it's a beautiful...
Terrible photos, sorry.
Terrible photos.
Terrible photos. Like, look at the one on the left.
So what I'll get...
A bit of context on the one on the left. That was my second year in California, and my teammates and I, we all agreed to put on a very serious face in our photo. So if you look back on that year, majority of us have a pretty non-slick, non-smiling photo.
Yeah. Yeah, it got a little bit better as the years go. When you look at all the profile pictures of yourself made over the years, it got a little bit more happier, a little bit more loose, right? But I love this. I love this crew cut, mate. You went full military there, mate.
I did. I used to cut my own hair to save a bit of money when I was over in the States too. So there was some years where I messed up and I had to rock it.
I love it. It's fantastic. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Tony, and Tony's going to talk a little bit about himself. Tony, all the major points are on that slide, so maybe you want to rattle off a little bit about your journey, starting here in Sydney and then all the way through to where you kind of ended up in the pathway in the US.
Yeah, so from a footballing side, I started here in Sydney, where I played a lot of my club football in the Granville and Parramatta area. And then I kind of progressed my way through and played through the NPL levels. I was very fortunate. I went to a sports high school. I went to Hill Sports to start off with before going to Westfield Sports. And in terms of club football, I was a part of the Project 22 program. I'm not sure if everyone's across what that program was, but essentially back in the day, Football New South Wales created a program to develop players in preparation for the FIFA World Cup in 2022. And so they spent all this money, created one team and pretty much put all the best players in the 1996 and 1997 year age group together. And essentially they made one representative team to play for New South Wales, and I was very fortunate I was in that program. From there, I went into the New South Wales Institute of Sport program. It's a program that's no longer around anymore, but it's pretty much, again, same kind of concept, one team with the best two age groups, 96 and 97 born players, in preparation for the under-17 FIFA World Cup, which was a 2-year kind of program period where you'd come in as a 15-year-old, prepare for the Asian Cup, and then if you're successful into getting into the final squad for the Asian Cup, followed by the World Cup, then you, by the time at the end of the 2 years, you should be around 16 and a half years old, and then you're playing in the World Cup against the best kids in the world. Unfortunately, I was in and around the Joey's program for about the 2 years I was there, myself and my brother included. But I didn't get to go and play for the country, so I never got to travel to all the Asian tournaments or any of the other preparation tournaments in Bolivia or South America when we're getting ready for the games. So once I was finished with NSWIS, or the New South Wales Institute of Sport, I had to go back into club level, and I was very fortunate. I got picked up by Rockdale City Suns. I was 16 years old playing in the under-20s competition, and I was also getting quite a few runs in first grade at 16. But I was also getting very close to the end of my, schooling at Westfield Sports, and I was kind of stuck in between what I wanted to do next. So I was at Rockdale playing first grade as a 16-year-old, super excited about that. I was at Westfield Sports finishing off my studies, which I was really, really enjoying. Then at the same time, I was a part of the Sydney FC youth program, which I was very fortunate of being a part of for, I think, 3 years since I was 15. And then I kind of came to a bit of a roadblock. I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. I had a contract with Sydney FC youth at the age of 16, and then I had also aspirations to study as well. At the time, I wanted to become a doctor. So what had happened was a friend introduced me to John, and John essentially sold me the world and said that, why don't you take your footballing talent and go over to America, where you can probably do both at the same time and get it all paid for. I was like, you know what, why not? So we went on the recruitment journey. John kind of went through the questionnaire with what I wanted, was very particular about some of the details. I think one of the questions that stuck out to me was like, were you keen on going to a school that was religious? And I thought it was a bit odd, it's just a school. But when I got to America, I guess like traveling around the country and seeing the different religious schools that were around and just your standard public schools and state-based schools, it was actually a really important question, because at those religious schools over in the United States, they're very particular about their rules and they're very strict on how they do things. So I guess going through the question and having a little bit of laugh and then going over to the United States and experiencing it for the first time was a bit of a shock to my system. But fast forward, I found John was able to connect me to California State University, San Bernardino, and at the time it was an Australian coach that was looking after the program, and he was doing a revamp, so essentially coming in for the first year and pretty much getting rid of all the older players and bringing in young blood, foreign talent, and trying to get the school to where they were. I think traditionally the school was a top 25 school in the country for Division II, and they fell off the ranks a little bit because of inconsistency in the program. And what he was trying to do was rebuild that. So he brought myself, 4 other foreigners, and he brought a lot of interstate players into the program that year. And I was very fortunate that I was able to come into the program and instantly start playing consistently from the first year all the way to the 4th year. And in a lot of cases in America, because I got to coach in the college system too, a first-year student coming into a college system, they rarely get to play unless you are top talent or you bring something a little bit different to the program. So I was very fortunate that when I came in, my experiences in Australia playing in the men's competition and being in the elite environment that I was able to come in and really prove my worth to the program and pretty much start playing straight away. In terms of my degree, I was still keen on becoming a doctor. So the degree that I chose at Cal State was biology pre-medicine. So I did that for the 4 years that I was there. I guess as an athlete over there, playing wise, I enjoyed it. It was a different kind of experience, very different to Australia, where you have a very short, condensed season in the fall, where you play probably 10 to 12 weeks worth of football, and then you take a big break where you just focus on your studies, focus on your physical health and kind of mental well-being. The goal for the NCAA is not to burn you out as a college athlete. So I got a lot of good time on the pitch, a lot of intense time on the pitch in a short period of time, but then also got a lot of time to focus on my studies and extracurricular activities, which I got involved in quite a bit. Being the person that I am, I didn't want to get homesick, and I tried to throw myself at anything possible that I could possibly do. So I was in an organization called SAC. It's like a Student Athletic Advisory Committee, which is a national kind of program where a lot of the student athletes come in to advocate for different things and do a lot of charitable work, which was really cool. I spent a lot of time in the labs as well with my other biology pre-medicine students, because to be honest, there wasn't many other people doing pre-medicine, especially in my team. They were all business and communication majors, and we laugh about it because the communication majors didn't really like school, so they picked that major because it required them to talk a lot. So I was only one of very few people in my program that wanted to actually do something with my academics. So I got to spend a lot of time with different people from different walks of life in that program. A lot of people from Saudi Arabia in my degree, and a lot of people from Mexico and all over the world was there too. After my 4 years, I graduated. Right before I graduated, though, I ran into another roadblock. I wanted to go to med school, but unfortunately my scholarship at the time, or the scholarships I was applying for, wasn't going to cover med school fees. So I was very fortunate in my time over the 4 years that my first year in college, I would say in terms of cost, I probably got 75-80% of my fees covered for that entire year. And because of my performance academically and athletically, it went to 85 to 90, and then 95 to pretty much 90 to pretty much 100% coverage. And that's because I worked on campus as well, got extra funding through some other awards that I was able to get throughout my time there because of just my academic ability and what I was doing for the program. And then I worked quite a bit on campus across different departments to keep myself busy. Just an FYI, my hours that I was spending on campus was probably, I'd be there from 6 o'clock in the morning, I'd leave at around 11 o'clock at night. And I did that every day for about 5 years, but it was worth it. It was a great experience. So I couldn't go into med school, so I had to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. And then I was really excited and kind of loving the opportunities I was getting in America. So I tried to explore whatever I could possibly do to stay in the country and ride the wave a little bit. And my advisor at the time told me about something called a graduate assistant program or assistantship. And essentially what that is typically universities, what they do is they offer graduate students an opportunity to work on campus, and they subsidize or cover pretty much your master's degree tuition plus more. And I was very lucky that the jobs that I was working on campus had those graduate assistant programs elsewhere around the country. And the one that I was able to get covered my tuition for my master's degree, my food and my housing as well, plus earning a bit of a wage every single week, which it was perfect. So when I accepted the role, the only master's degree that was available was an MBA, and the concentration that I ended up picking was a project management concentration, and it was very fitting to the work that I was doing on campus. So I did a lot of event management and operations on campus, and I like interacting with people, and I thought it was a no-brainer for me to pick that concentration, and I haven't looked back since. And now that I'm back in Australia, I'm a project manager. I have 2 degrees that I didn't pay anything for, which I've calculated is worth over 250, 300 grand worth of tuition fees that I did not pay. And I'm working in an industry straight away since the day I was able to graduate, and I've been progressing and climbing the corporate ladder since. Sorry, I went a bit over.
No, you didn't go over, mate. You hit the nail on the head, and then some. Very inspiring journey. And, you know, again, it just resonates. What was I listening to today? I was listening to something about grit, having grit, right? And you embody that, my friend. And I don't think it's, look, again, I'm compartmentalizing you, but it's no different to a lot of our clients out there who've gone on to just exactly what Tony's discussed. You can transplant Tony's experience across hundreds of case studies in our network, and it's just testament to the way that the system is geared toward. We talked about the athletics, and we'll probably uncover that a little bit more, but the academic success of these student athletes from all around the world. And, you know, Tony's testament to that. But going back to that word grit, I think it's just really, I mean, you heard it from 6 a.m. to almost midnight, putting your head down, working. You know, I was really fortunate before Tony left for the States. He invited me down to Cabramatta, and I spent time with a fam for his farewell kind of dinner and get together, which was amazing. Amazing Vietnamese food for sure. Enjoyed that. But what I saw there was a family and siblings who were all united in this common goal of working hard together to get to whatever they wanted to achieve, right? And so hearing this story, Tony, that's a blessing. Like for me, hearing what you did and knowing obviously what you've done, but hearing it and you verbalizing it resonates so profoundly with this pathway. And, you know, the reason why, you know, Hans and I kind of invest a lot of time and resources in getting the word out in regards to these pathways. So really good stuff, mate. Appreciate it. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into the Q&A piece. So as I mentioned to you, I want you to, whether or not you want to just unmute your microphone and ask the question, you can do that. If you're a little bit shy, you can drop a note in the chat box as well, and I'll pick that up as we go along. And we might even do a little bit of a mix, a little bit of a blend, because I know my dear friend Hans is a phenomenal interviewer. So he might you know, get some, you know, pretty hairy questions over to Tony to have to field and answer. But again, whether you have questions you want to put into the chat, no problem. Any questions that you just want to unmute your microphone and ask Tony, then you know, with it. And again, the system, scholarships, we'll chime in across any dialogue as well. System, scholarships, Tony's experience both academically and athletically. He kind of touched on the academics in a lot of detail. That's great. Terry's already sent through a question. We might kick off with that one. But yeah, but don't be shy. Ask as many questions as possible. Okay, I think this is one for myself. So Terry asked the question around what age do you suggest to apply for the scholarship? I've seen that most of you that registered tonight, a lot of you are still many years. I mean, I could imagine probably only year 7, year 8, some year 9 or otherwise, and some of you that might be older. It's a bit of a nuanced approach, right? So, and it does differ between the male side of the game and the female side of the game in the collegiate market. Typically with boys, I always say that heading into year 11 is a good time to kind of ramp up, so that by year 12, you're already at a point in time where you actually have engaged coaches within our network and potentially have received some kind of a scholarship opportunity, or several, if you're lucky, that you can work around, compartmentalize, and then select. And then what happens there is, once you've selected your program, you have 2 entry points into the system. So you basically enter in the system the year post year 12, and you have 2 timeframes, whether it be what they call the spring season, which is a January start, and or the fall season, which typically means that you will arrive for pre-season in August and then kick off your season in September. So just things to think about on the men's side. On the women's side, it's a little bit more unique, and what you'll find across the system is that there are more women's programs, college soccer programs, than what you'll find on the men's side. There are more scholarships available across the women's side of the game than what you'll find on the men's side as well, typically, given the depth and breadth of programs. And what that means is that it can be extremely competitive to gain those scholarships. And so coaches start the recruiting cycle quite early, right? Typically around about the year 10 mark. We had one of our girls as an example very recently, who's in Division I at the minute, with school in Texas. And she started with us in year 10. And by midway through year 11, she already had 20 different, kind of opportunities and offers that were presented to her. And the way that it worked was, a lot of those opportunities filtered through me, and I connected the dots and liaised with the family and divulged that information to them, so they were very aware of the different opportunities that were coming through. But and for that girl, she basically made a verbal commitment. So she verbally committed to a program midway through year 11. And then by the end of year 12, that program offered her formal scholarship and away she went. So that's typically the timeframes. I always say there's no wrong or right, and there's no kind of hard and fast rule. Sometimes kids come in what I consider late in the recruiting cycle, so they might be a little bit older. They might have just gone into their gap year, so they've just finished year 12, and then they're asking, hey, what am I doing with myself? I might want to go down this pathway of getting my education and playing footy, and so they'll look into those kinds of opportunities. And there are different parts of the system, interestingly, where if you look at the 3 major governing bodies, there's the NCAA and the NAIA. They're 2 major governing bodies that basically oversee 4-year intercollegiate athletics. They're both very, very relevant. And then you have another governing body called the NCAA, which manages the 2-year junior colleges. Okay, and they are all very relevant, right? So whether you start,
I think we might come back to the different,
sure, yep,
the different levels, because you've also got a couple of questions queued up.
I know,
I think we'll come back, because I'm sure that there's probably a couple of good questions to throw Tony's way just around NCAA levels, right, and understanding what governs, an NCAA 1 versus 2 versus 3. It's more about athletic endowment than it is around playing ability in some respects. And so I'm sure Tony probably can answer some cool questions around that. But I think you've already got a couple of questions in the weight room.
Yeah, let's get to those. And thanks. My good friend Hans always keeps me on track, doesn't he? I love that. when I start going off tangent. So there's another here. I think this is a really good one from Nicole. And this one is definitely one for Tony. So the question there, Tony, is what did you do to overcome self-doubt while you were in the US? Great question.
Yeah, great question. For me as a footballer, I've always had a really strong rooted why in terms of why I do things every single day. Just a little bit of context. My parents were both immigrants from Vietnam, and they traveled on boat with my brother and sister to come over to Australia. And they didn't really have the greatest start to life in Australia either. So when myself, my brother, and younger sister were born, we were pretty much given the opportunity to chase our dreams. And I remember very clearly the conversation that I had with my older brother when going through this process. He said to me that the sacrifices that I made to take you to football, to training, to your games, is because I want you to chase your dreams. It's the same speech that I had for him at his wedding when I was his best man, saying thank you for giving me the opportunity. So for me, I knew that my parents gave up a lot of time and effort for me, as well as my older brother and siblings. They essentially didn't have a life as much as they would have liked to growing up. They were looking after us. So when I went over to the United States, I knew that I left a lot behind to go and chase my dreams. And if I didn't come back with something worthwhile, then I'm disappointed them, or I didn't live up to the expectation that I set on myself when I left the country and left home. So there was a lot of moments in the United States where I was kind of scared, struggling. I experienced a lot of things for the first time. I experienced a long-term injury. I experienced losing consistently. I experienced, this is a good one, a relationship, because I've never, while I was here in Australia, I was focused on football. But when I was over there, I fell for a girl, and then I tried to learn how to be a good boyfriend, and then it didn't work out. So I was like questioning what kind of person I am. So I had to do that a lot on my own and a lot via phone. But I always reminded myself of why I'm here and what I'm doing this for. And in my room, in all my dorms and all my apartments that I had it very clearly on the window or on the glass mirror that I'm doing it for mum and dad. I'm doing it for my older brother and older sister. So that helped me a lot too.
So good. What a great backdrop. Great answer to that question. A phenomenal question, Nicole. Thanks for that, Tony, and thanks for being vulnerable, mate, and opening up about it. It's brilliant. Appreciate it. Some great questions here. Okay, maybe, you know what, we're going to field all these for Tony. Tony's going to be the expert for tonight. Put him under the limelight. Is the football season generally 3 months across all states, and what level should players be at? Can I touch on? Maybe you want to touch on that? Okay, Hans.
Yeah. So yes. So the main season for any collegiate level is usually that 3 month period from August through to November. The spring season I thought is a very weird way to structure a season, but the rule at the NCAA level is during spring, I believe I can't remember, I think it's 9 to 12 contacts with 6 games that you can play, and it was 6 days where you can play games. And usually what they did to us was to get by the rule to play more games. So on every time we had a game day, we would play 2 games that day. So over the 6 days that we could play throughout that 9 to 12 contacts as a squad, would play almost 10 to 12 games, depending on how keen the coach was to organize games. But I'll be honest with you, there was one time we played 2 Division I schools, and the day prior, everyone in my team was like dead. Yeah, they smash you during the springtime because you don't have many contacts with the coach. In terms of what levels should players be at, one thing that I've learnt about Australians going over to the US system is that in Australia here, we don't have many full-time environments where kids or players can make the most of training every single day, going to the gym and having people that will look after you physically, mentally, and on the pitch as well. What I see with a lot of Australian players, and this is me coming as a coach when I was coaching over in the United States, was Australian kids usually thrive under the environment because, one, less responsibilities to worry about everything else outside of football. They can just focus on studies. They can focus on football. They can focus on their own physical well-being. For example, with me, even though I was in a pretty much full-time environment here in Sydney, when I was over there, I was able to do even more. So I was training every single day. I spent a lot of time with the strength and conditioning guys because I had the time to do it. I didn't have to drive around or do anything else outside of that. And my studies, I was able to push all my studies to late at night. So I had time to look after my body and do whatever I want throughout the day.
Tony, could I add to that, just if that's okay?
Yep.
So I think Tony was pretty eloquent in that response. But I would say a week or two ago, we did a webinar with one of our female alumni from Canberra. She went over there, and of course, her primary objective was her football aspiration. But like Tony, she also had some educational ambition in terms of not just doing communications, Tony, but she wanted to reach a little bit higher. And really what she said is, she said, I'll try and encompass it succinctly. She said, when I went over there, she said, firstly, the infrastructure at my college was next level. She said, I couldn't believe. She said the gym was something that was out of another universe. She said the facilities, we had like 12 to 14 fields, including synthetics and natural and half fields and indoor. Okay. She said exactly as you. She said the coaching staff in the athletic department wasn't just the coaching staff for the football team. It was a set of high-level skills in movement, science, nutrition, high-performance management, and so forth. So she said, I got the benefit out of all of that in addition. And then because I didn't have any distractions, she said, even though I was a pretty disciplined person at my sort of schoolwork, she said pretty much my day was, I can't remember, I think it was breakfast at 7 till 8, then gym, then lessons till lunchtime, then lunch, then afterwards maybe 1 or 2 lessons after lunch, or alternatively 1 to 2 hours of private study. Then the whole afternoon from sort of 1:32 till 5:30 was on the field, in the gym, with the team, playing games, whatever the case may be. Back for dinner. And then she said the thing, even though she said she didn't need it, but she said for a lot of the other players, especially some of the international players that came in, she said the college is so vested in you to make sure you're also keeping up with your studies and so forth, that they helped provide structured study groups for whatever you were studying. So if it was pre-med, it's pre-med. If it was communications, it was communications, and so forth. So I think it's really important to sort of understand that. That's what we find, even though, because I know the question is coming up about, are people, going more for the football or going more for the education and so forth? And it's both. Ultimately, it's both. But what we do find is with players that might come in with slightly less focus on their study, and that's, so I'll finally get to my question for you, Tony, sorry, but when you're living that football dream, but at the same time, because of the less distractions and more structure, more focus around the study, nearly every one of our clients ends up leaning into their studies more because there's a better opportunity to do so. Maybe you could break that up a bit for me, Tony, if that makes sense.
I'll probably give you a really good example. So my younger brother is a professional footballer in Vietnam, and all he does is football. But one thing we talk about all the time is, what are you doing in your spare time? Because after training, what do you have for the rest of the day? And thankfully for him, he has his businesses and whatnot. For a lot of the student athletes in the college system, what's great about having football and your studies kind of looped in one, after training, there is not an expectation, but you feel kind of responsible now that you have to go and study and make sure you keep up with your studies. Because I'm not sure how it's structured in majority of the other programs, but with mine, if your academics dropped below a certain level, you weren't eligible to play, or you'll be at risk of losing your scholarship as well. So when you go over to college, there's a commitment to not just your footballing, but your academics too, because why would you go to the college system if you didn't have any interest in your studies at all?
Yeah.
And I can totally understand some people, they might want to go and try to get drafted. Great. but you also have to understand what kind of commitment you're making to the college system, because it's both, not just one or the other.
Okay, and Tony, we won't touch on it now, but I'm sure it's going to be something that comes up later. Is when we talked about that condensed season, there's also a significant amount of work that John and Upper 90 does to create opportunities outside of your actual college games. So in terms of summer leagues, in terms of semi-pro, in terms of putting yourself in the shop window and so forth. So eventually we can get to that, John, but I know there's already some questions that we need to get on with. But Tony, thanks again.
Thanks, Tony. Great. I think there's another, Alistair, you got some phenomenal questions. I think you've been chomping at the bit waiting for us to answer some of these, but I'll start with the first here. How common is it for people to study as seriously as Tony while on scholarships? And do most athletes opt for easier degrees? Good question. Is it difficult to balance playing and serious study? Tony might touch on that a little bit from his experience, but I'll give you some examples of some of our clients in a moment as well. So maybe, Tony, you want to touch on some of that? And then what I'll do is I'll cover it off with just a quick slide that shows where some of our clients have gone on from an academic perspective and a few of their stories as well.
So I'll touch on the serious kind of mentality when it comes to studying. So the school that I coached at and the school that I did my master's at was called Lawrence Technological University, probably one of the top engineering schools in the country. On Forbes, it has the highest success rate of students graduating with a six-figure job in the engineering field, whether it is automotive, which is right there in the city of Detroit, or a lot of the aeronautical stuff in the other states. So, for example, the school that I was at, it was an NAIA school. We had about 30 to 40 student athletes across two teams for the men's side, and I think 30 in the women's team. A lot of them architects, nurses, engineers, design students, all doing top degrees while also playing football as well. And I guess what's really good about that school and what I really appreciated with all the student athletes, the way they plan their schedules to work around school and studies was phenomenal, because at that school in particular, academics was first and football was pretty much second. So the way they did it was they prioritized all their classes, because it was a small school. There was a select few of top professors at that university, and then the coaches and the athletic department plan around that to make sure they have every opportunity to succeed in the classroom, because that's their main priority as the athletic department. Can we get our students to be the next big architect in the city of Detroit, or engineer doing their thing in their field?
Yeah, so that's so there's some great context, and Lawrence Tech is definitely a phenomenal school, and they play at a very competitive level as well in the NAIA. I'll give you some examples. I'll just put up this slide so you guys can see. This is a very small portion of our clients that have gone full circle, a very tiny portion, but if you can read through it, you'll quickly see that we've had kids who have gone on to phenomenal, just like Tony, whether they, played at Division I schools and gone on to their MBAs in project management, becoming engineers, becoming chemical engineers, working for large brand name universities in the science departments, whether it be graduating with honours at the school where we sent them, and then going on to full ride scholarships at law schools and graduating with their Juris Doctor degrees. Liam is a phenomenal story as well of a kid who was solely focused on the footy side of things, playing at an NAIA school in Indianapolis, really got entrenched in the business school there. And the business school did, just like Tony said, if they're there to guide you and they want to see you succeed both academically. Athletic is just the fun part. You're enjoying yourself, you're in world-class facilities, infrastructure, and you're training like a professional athlete day in, day out for the time that you're focused on that. but from an academic perspective, you have an amazing trajectory. And Liam, given it's Indianapolis, obviously we know the Indianapolis Colts in NFL, but it's also famous for the Indianapolis 500. Liam got recruited out of university, so he was an intern for the IndyCar 500 experience. So basically during the summers, he'd travel with the IndyCar experience across many different states of the US, wherever they were holding the races, and really experiencing that, right? Being right in there with the drivers and the cars and all that kind of stuff. And so what happened was, when he had finished his degree, the IndyCar experience paid, got his visa sorted, his green card sorted. He ended up working for them for a few years, and then he got picked up by McLaren, by Arrow McLaren, which is part of the IndyCar scene. So he's actually working for McLaren right now. Amazing story there. Some again, kids who were very focused on the football side of things, who went down the academic pathway. Aaron was a really interesting one as well, where he was just football nuts, year 11, year 12, didn't really focus on his study. In actual fact, I remember seeing a report card that basically said it's going to be very hard for us to see what the trajectory is for him academically. Ended up getting him into a really good 4-year school in Boston. Started there for 2 years and had aspirations after those 2 years to play NCAA Division I, and then got him over to a school in New York, Long Island University, graduated with his Bachelor of Business Administration. We lost touch with each other for about a year or so, and he checked in. He's still living there. He's actually getting married. He's the one who sent me the the wedding invite the other day. But his mother ran a small law firm, and she, obviously, I didn't know this, but Aaron came back to me and said, "Hey, I just wanted to give you a life update. I went and got my master's degree." And I said, "Master's degree? You weren't even supposed to get a degree, when you were in high school." And he got his master's degree, but he added the fact that he actually went to Boston University. Obviously, it's a very prestigious school, but he started focusing on criminology and criminal law. So he got a master's in criminology, and then now he's working for the Boston Police Department. So just a phenomenal story, right? And what you see here with Christy is not too different to a lot of our clients. I mean, you just heard Tony mention that, he spent time as a grad assistant coach at Lawrence Tech. Many of our clients leverage that pathway to get their masters covered, but also become coaches. And many have aspired to become coaches themselves. Christy's a great example, and there's several others right now in the system of our alumni who have now gone on to become either head coaches or assistant coaches across the college landscape. So Christy graduated from a D1 school in Louisiana, where I sent her. She had a great career. Then went and did a master's at a smaller NAIA school in Kansas, became the graduate assistant there, but then really shot up as a coach, and then got hired by her alma mater, Nichols State University, where I placed her, and this year was her first year as an NCAA Division I head coach, right? So what I'm trying to express is that and I think, Alistair, going back to your question, this pathway is tremendously geared towards academic success. And, I've seen so many of our clients just totally hit it out of the ballpark with their career trajectories by going down this pathway. I would dare say that our focus as a business has always been, the football side is what kind of gets you into the door, but your academics is what's going to deliver. And there's a statistic that is very telling. The NCAA publish reports every few years, I'd say, And you can actually search for this online. And their last report was a sweeping overview of the state of play in the NCAA across all the divisions and otherwise. And it gets very, very granular with all the data that they show in terms of, how much sleep does a student athlete have? What kind of meals do they eat? All very granular data. But one of them was around how many of student athletes in the NCAA actually go on to a pro career in their chosen sport. The statistic is less than 1%. You can roll that statistic out across every layer of professional athletics or professional soccer or football in particular, anywhere in the planet, right? And it is truly less than 1%. Now, the US is a massive market and the world's a big place. 1% of a global football population is a decent amount of people that go pro, but then you can compartmentalize professionalism and say, what is truly pro, right? Hans has some, great examples, obviously, with his son you can talk to, who's a pro currently. Obviously, Tony with his brother. But it's very few and far between that go pro. It's statistically proven, right? Now, out of those that do potentially go pro, on average, if they're lucky, the average contract is 4 years. At best, it's 2 years in the league, in any league that you're playing in. So what do you have to fall back on is the question that I typically ask. And it's your education, right? So that's the beauty of this system. I've traveled right across different parts of the world in many, many, many different football environments, right up to the EPL and other parts of the world, and sat down with education managers and heads of academies and all that kind of stuff. They look towards their kids and say, we know that it's only going to be less than 1% that potentially go down our pathway. And they may have started with us as young as 12 or 13 or younger in our academy setup. Very few will go into the first team setting. Most of them, and there's very telling reports that have been delivered in the EPL, for example, that show that many of these kids burn out. They get recycled back in the system and they don't really have many pathways outside of just regular day job or otherwise, right? And education is not really talked about and it's not very well integrated even in those environments. So what you see with Tony and what you see with the caliber of player that transitions into the collegiate environment is telling to the fact that it's less than 1%. And so there's a lot of these kids that are coming out of top academy environments all across different parts of the world that end up in the college system. And Tony could probably attest to the fact that he probably played alongside and against kids from all around the world who came out of elite football environments. Now, the educational facet for me is paramount. Like I said to you, I've been to a number of different graduation ceremonies. I've been very privileged to be able to be part of that. Unfortunately, I couldn't get out to Tony's, but that would have been brilliant. I would have loved to have been part of that.
John, can I just dive in for a sec, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Because I think you've summarized that really, really well, and that's really, really important. And obviously, I've known John for a long, long time. He coached my son when he was like 12 or something like that. So I've already seen the journey for so many of the kids, and some of the kids that I've coached have gone through upper 90 as well. So I've been able to stand on the sideline, cheer them on, and see and hear their stories, both footballing wise and academically. Where I'm not taking an opposite stance to what John just said, because everything he said verbatim is true. But what I probably maybe just put a slightly different flavor on it for a second, or elaborate on it a little bit more, is that, so as an example, so my son, he actually played with your brother Tony at NSWIS a long time ago. And so as I went through that whole process, NSWIS, A-League Youth, NPL, the player pathways in the Australian game are fairly limited. Okay. And so when you get to a certain point in time, if as a player, as a male player, if you're already playing, NPL 20s or first grade when you're 16 or so, you're probably on a pretty decent trajectory. But if you're not getting into the first grade until you're 22, 23, 24, it just has a slightly different sort of likely outcome. There's always exceptions to the rule. I totally get that. But what I would say is that, I think of all the kids that I've seen in, for example, in my son's age group cohort and stuff like that, who were really good players, and a lot of them might have played a handful of A-League games, or they might have played a bunch of youth, NYL games, or they might have played a lot of, NPL 1 games, at an early age and stuff. But the opportunity just didn't present itself for whatever reason, good, bad, indifferent. New coach, change of coach, flavor of the month, change of the club. We all know all those trials and tribulations. But what I do see in those players that come into upper 90, even if they've got a huge focus on the footballing side, that doesn't stop them from reaching whatever level they're going to reach. You know what I mean? So they get to really enjoy 4 years of college football. Again, we didn't show the pictures that I've seen, the videos I've seen of Tony embracing, some amazing moments with his team on the field with, great success and so forth, right? So Tony, we've got some incredible footage of you enjoying your football, right? But at the same time, then either A, as John said, plan B is you walk away with a degree. What you do with that degree, that's really up to you. Do you want to then go do your master's, or do you want to return to Australia, or whatever the case may be? But if you've lived that same and you've taken advantage of all the infrastructure, the coaching, the facilities and everything else from a footballing standpoint focus in the US, and now you want to reach to be that 1%, Upper 90 will help you do that. Great example. At the moment, we have a range of contacts within semi-pro, so USL, USL1, USL2, the new Canadian Premier League, and so forth, talking to them constantly. We also actually place kids who can't afford or didn't have the academics or didn't have the desire to go through the US college system. We're helping them find opportunities in the North American market, because there's just various tiers of or levels. Here we have basically A-League, NPL, that's it. In the US, there's multiple tiers on male and female side, right? So we will go out of our way. If the player's that determined and focused and driven that they want to have that football journey and reach for that 1%, whatever that is, semi-pro, pro, USL, CPL, if they can't make MLS or something else, we'll help them on that journey. Okay. And as John said, maybe that journey ends up being that they become a physio or strength and conditioning coach or a nutritionist or something, and then they continue a career in football or career in athletics, but it's just not as a player necessarily.
No, good segue into that part of the system. We definitely have, several players every single year put up their hand to go play in the many semi-professional leagues during the summer. And it's just a great platform for them to be seen and scouted at higher levels of play, potentially. But it also allows them to kind of network and connect with other coaches and other players from all the varying parts of the system. So any number of these clubs might have kids from the NCAA across the 3 divisions, or NAIA players, or junior college players. And you might be at a school in Nebraska, but then during the summer you want to find a semi-pro team, and you go down to Texas and play at a semi-pro club, which is of a very good standard as well. But you've got the confidence of knowing that you have your degree on the way. That's it. I think Alistair, you had this great question. We'll wrap it up with this, but you mentioned I mentioned Amherst. Just again, a phenomenal relationship that we have there, and an amazing academic school, ranked this year in the Forbes list top 10 in the nation for the quality of the academics. The boy who I mentioned, Simon, who won the game-winning goal that got them the national tournament title this week. He's already, and I can't name, Dad told me don't name the company, but he's got a phenomenal job in New York already lined up for him in the financial markets. He graduated with a finance degree from Amherst. Now, Amherst, phenomenal school. Alistair, to your question, do we deal with a full range of colleges? Absolutely, from community colleges right up to schools in what they call the Power 4 conferences. So we've had kids play for big brand name schools. I call them the ESPN schools. So when you flick on ESPN, you see the big American football teams or otherwise play. We have those kinds of relationships. Great that you've asked, or kind of indirectly asked, about community colleges. A lot of people bypass that pathway or don't think about it. So junior colleges like you going to TAFE, but TAFE with infrastructure. And basically the deal there is you spend 2 years at a junior college and it acts as a platform for you to be able to get a lot of playing minutes, playing time, really kick up your stats. And the coaches who recruit you in those 2-year junior colleges are heavily connected back into the 4-year space. So as Tony mentioned earlier, it might be very tough for you as a freshman trying to get playing time as a pure freshman going into a program like where Tony went to, in a nationally ranked type of program. But being in the system for some time, you might spend a year or two at a community college or a JUCO, as they call them. And then that coach is very highly incentivized to make sure that he's networking all the time and finding opportunities for you in the 4-year space, so that once you graduate from a 2-year junior college, then you transition into a final 2 years of study and play to get your degree. So the junior college space is actually a really good low-cost option to get into the system. And it's a great way to, if a player really needed to polish up a little bit in terms of their athleticism or otherwise, then I think it's a good starting point. It's a great way for them to get playing time straight off the bat. And it's a great way for them then to be promoted back into the 4-year space. So Alistair, great question with that. And really top to toe, it's such a diverse mix of schools. Like I mentioned, there's today roughly about 780 men's and women's college soccer programs in our direct network across the 3 major governing bodies. Okay. And at any one point in time, it's either one or two things. The way I promote is I'll go out and promote our players consistently until we find an opportunity that is the right fit for them. But then outside of that, and just today, I mean, I had a college coach come back to us in the NAIA. They went into the Final Four this year, very competitive program, looking for very high-end players. And he said, John, I've got 4 full-ride scholarships, meaning everything paid for. We're looking for a striker, a midfielder, and 2 centre backs, and they're all full rides. So, but obviously they have to be a top. So there's that. At any one point in time in my day, I'm getting bombarded with all these different requests. But
and also, just John, just an example, another add-on example to that. Like I was just thinking about, when we did our player parent night with North Shore Football recently, and we had a couple of alumni, and we had Zach there and his brother and so forth, so coming out of Northern Tigers and getting, John, secured 3 college offers, and the diversity of it, one was in San Diego, one was in Boston, one was in Alabama, right? And that, of course, there's a geographic, attachment for each of those, but there's also, what's their football program like? But then, as Tony would say, it's also what's the specialty of the school from a study standpoint. Is it a science school, or is it an engineering school? Is it, so those are really important things. And I think that's where, again, Upper 90 is really, really strong and thoughtful through that network of over 700 colleges of being able to help pinpoint where the best opportunities sit.
So for me, it's always about, well encapsulated, it's always about the right fit. And that takes a lot of time to figure out sometimes. And sometimes you've got to really troll through the different opportunities to make sure it is. And I think it's testament to those 15 years of seeing what you've seen tonight and hearing Tony's story that, we really work hard to make sure that we do find that fit, and that we work. It's not just about getting the kid their foot in the door. it's about managing them through the process. So when they're in the system, it's never linear. They might start at one program, they might finish up somewhere else, and we manage them through that process. But Alistair, I hope that answered some of your questions, at least at the high level. I'll finish it off with this. I want to say thank you, one and all. We've gone well over time, so I'm really grateful for your time tonight. I know that, you know, it's Thursday night, should be in front of the telly just relaxing, but instead you're looking at myself and Hans and young Tony. Tony's the least, you know Hans is handsome, Tony's super handsome. You had to look at me or you, right? But I hope you guys enjoy your night. And what I'll say is next steps. If you are interested, thank you, Terry. If you are interested in finding out more and getting a little bit more succinct and granular information, what we can do is either a one-to-one video call and or a face-to-face meeting if you're obviously you're all in Sydney. So and just talk about it a little bit more detail and give you more clarity about our services and the way that we go about what we do. Our alumni are always available. Like Tony's always, you know, phenomenal, and any one of our clients, whether they're here or based overseas or they're currently playing in the system, they always say, John, if there's a parent or player that wants to find out more, get them in touch with us. So as a next step, happy to have a further video call and or meet up with you if you're nearby, and we can meet up for a coffee and a yarn and talk about college soccer and everything else in between. But very, very grateful for everyone for jumping on the call. Hans, thanks again for
Hey, John, can I say one quick thing? Because I know you sent out an email, but also we have a talent ID camp coming up in February.
Yes.
And we'll probably have 4 or 5 US college coaches here for that. So we'll send you everyone who's on this call will send you details for that as well. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll keep you posted across that. Really excited about that February camp. So several coaches have already put up their hands across the whole system to come out. And a few Aussie coaches in the mix, which is great. They've been in the system for quite some time, so it's going to be good to interact with them. One and all, again, won't keep you any longer. Thank you so much, Hans. Thanks again. Tony, you're a legend. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks so much for your wisdom and all your experiences and imparting that for everyone. Have a great night, one and all, and we'll catch up real soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See ya.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.